Hey everyone, this is Tony Reeves. If you like my content or have any suggestions, please let me know, and by all means, make sure you share. The only way I can get my word out is you help me get the word out as well.
And then comes the paperwork nightmare. Let me tell you, I had the opportunity to represent two people and when I was in Florida. One was for commercial foreclosure and another one was for a residential foreclosure. And then I also had a situation where I wasn't the attorney. I didn't file a notice in the court to ask for permission. It was one of those things where my one of my loved ones' moms was having some problems, and one of my loved ones, she asked me, "Would you help my mom out? I don't need you to be her attorney. I just need you to be able to be on the phone with her when she's talking to the bank and when she's going over through all this paperwork." And so what happened was her mom would send me all the paperwork that she got. And let me tell you, as someone who used to read all this paperwork when I represented someone who went through personal having to deal with this and also working with family members, that paperwork can be overwhelming because ultimately the bank is laying out all these different things that has to happen, and or the landlord is all these legal things that have to happen or that have happened that results in putting them in the position where you have to get out of the place. And so many times the kicker is that if you're already dealing with the stress of figuring out, okay, if I gotta move, how do I move on a dime? Where can we go? And then but wait a minute, I want to try to stay here. So you got all these things hanging over you, and now you're getting bombarded with all this paperwork, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, really, when you're looking at it, the bank is sending you all these different things, and they want you to sign this, they want you to review this, and then they tell you things like, they don't always tell you to get an attorney, but they encourage you. There'll be a little blib in there that says, hey, you might want to look at speaking to your attorney about this, or they send you copies of all that paperwork they sent you. I mean, all that paperwork you had to sign when you first bought the house or you first moved in, and you are like, and they highlight all these provisions that you have now breached, and you're like, good googa booga, and you are now in this weird situation where you don't know what to do next. You're going through the paperwork. You're trying to pull up the paperwork that you have that you think said something completely different, and now you're trying to understand the various provisions that they have in here. When they talk about, oh no, any legal proceedings has to be done in this state, not in the state you're in, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? So when you're in the midst of having to deal with all of the things in your life at the time, what also makes things worse is you're now looking at all this paperwork that's been dumped on you and trying to make some sense of it on your own without any legal assistance. And let me tell you, when I was working with my aunt, and that was my loved one, my aunt, and and I was looking at all of her paperwork, I was sitting here going, oh my gosh. Because then I started asking questions. Well, what about this? Do you have this? What about this? And when I was on the phone with some of the banks and they would say things, I would be like, well, this says this is here. Where is it? And they're like, well, it should be. Don't tell me about what it should be. Tell me where it is. Do you have it? No? Well, if you have it, provide it. If you don't have it, then I'm going to assume you don't have it and that it doesn't exist. Because if she doesn't have it and you don't have it, then what are we working with here? And it was wild because and I had the same thing when I was working with the personal foreclosure with one of my clients and one of the commercial foreclosures. Same thing. All these documents that they were saying that they should have and that needed to be present and they were going to rely upon. And I regularly was like, dude, where is this? And you started looking through the paperwork. And let me tell you, the even biggest nightmare of the paperwork is when it's usually when you're being sued for breach of contract, is when you start realizing all the crap you signed away. When you start looking at it critically and you say, oh crap, did I actually sign this? Yes, you did. Because at the time, you were more interested in moving to the place and less interested in being intimately familiar with all the nuances. And let's be clear, usually depending on the circumstances, if you're renting, you're only looking at probably a few things like what's their responsibility with regards to maintenance, what's your responsibility if you need to leave early and so forth like that. If you're buying a home, you're looking at, you probably have a realtor with you who's working it out, a closing agent, somebody who's explaining all these things to you. So you're not really thinking about it at that point. But let me tell you, When you're in that nightmare scenario where you're being sued to be evicted or sued in order to be foreclosed on, you start realizing quickly all the stuff that you signed up for, and you start having a big oh crap moment. And the sad part is that every state is a little different.